Today we will write expressions which sum to a first expression and yield the product of a second expression. We're doing this for setup preparations, for factoring. This is one of the steps that we really look into. But let's just jump right into it so we can set up the lesson later. What we mean by the sum and the product is we are saying what numbers add together that are also numbers that have the product of another. Our first example says we want to find the sum to 8, but also yields a product of 7. So the setup for this is we are going to actually start with our product. We're going to start with what value we want to multiply to get, because that's more limited than the numbers that we can add together. When we are adding, getting the sum, it could be infinite numbers. And then we're a little bit more focused on the product. What I mean by that is 7 is a prime number. There are only two numbers that multiply to equal 7. In this case, I can see that 1 plus 7 add up to equal 8. Now, if I started from the addition, I could have done 4 plus 4, 3 plus 5, almost made a mistake there. But none of those would have been adding up to 7. That's what we were trying to do, is a combination of both. We wanted the product to equal 7 and the sum to equal 8. Now, not all of the multiplication is going to be adding up to equal to the second number. For example, product of 36, we could use 1 and 36. Any number that we are finding the product of, or using as the product, we can always start with 1 times itself. Now when I do this, it adds up to equal 37, which is not the number that we are looking for. So then we would go to the next factors. 2 and 18. Yet again, when we add these up, we will get 20, not the number that we are looking for. So we move on. 3 is a factor. 3 times 12 gives us 36. And it also adds up to equal 15, what we were looking for. So now that we've found what we were looking for, we can write our answer down. Three and 12. Now sometimes the number that we're going to be dealing with is a negative number for our sum. If our product is a positive value, we can always deal with positive numbers, such as 1 times 3. In this case, we know this will equal 4. But in order to get a negative value with a positive product, we need to make both values negative. Negative 1 times a negative 3, writing the wrong number here, will equal a positive 3. And when we add these together to find the sum, it becomes a negative 4. So in this case, my two values are negative 1 and negative 3. If our product is negative, that means that only one of my factors is going to be negative. Now this one is a little bit trickier because there is an option of which one to be negative. This is when we look at the sum. If we see that we have a positive sum, that means that our smaller value, smaller factor, is going to be our negative. That'll always mean that we are subtracting a smaller number, which will give us a positive every time. We can continue this process. Not negative. Writing this down, keeping track of all the numbers that we have used so far. Ending up with -3 and 4, which gives us a sum of 1, which is also our answer. Forgot the box in my last one. And this one. Now, if you know your factoring, you can kind of make it a little bit easier. I know that negative, or in this case, the sum being negative and my product negative, I need to make my larger value negative. 1 and -300 clearly is not going to work. I can keep moving down, thinking through the process to make it a little bit easier. Say if I wanted to get to closer factors. Five and 60 are a closer estimate of what we're doing. So I don't have to go through 1. I don't have to go through 2, 3, 4. I can start skipping around, moving up to get to a closer value. In this case, that was supposed to be -60, which will give us a -55. Now, that's still not close enough, so we need to jump a little bit more. In this case, I jump all the way to my tens. 10 times -30 has the sum of -300. And adding these together have a sum of -20. So in this case, if you are good with your multiplication, you can jump around on your factors of your product in order to make it easier to find the sum. You do not have to always go through every single one. And if you simply go too far, you can always go back, backtrack, and fill in again. In our last example, just to show it off, we have a negative product, we have a negative sum, which means that my larger factors are going to be the negative. You have 1 and -6, which equals -5. And we have 2 and -3. These are the only 4 factors that we can use. We could also switch around where our negative is, but these are the only numbers to deal with. And this gives me a -1. As I stated, if I made the smaller numbers negative, then these would be positive values. The reason why we are combining these processes, yet again, like we stated, was to set up for our factoring process, as this is one of the first steps that we are going to do when we are factoring polynomials.